received a question in Module 4 about how to use the normal distribution in Excel and what we're looking at. Just to get a high level of understanding, this is a problem. It says this is with just limited information. Given a normal distribution with mean equal to 172 and standard deviation of 4.83, we want to find the probability that X bar, remember that's the sample mean, is greater than or equal to 180. So let's just take a little quick step back and just think about this. So remember, a normal distribution is when you have this nice little, what you have often heard, bell curve. I'm going to tell you guys right now, I'm not the best artist, so please do not judge my lack of symmetry. It's not intentional. I do my best. The idea is you have this like a big chunk of your data right here in the middle. So here you've got your mean. And then out here, you've got your, like one standard deviation. Sorry, again, horrible writing on the tablet, standard deviation. And about 68% of your data is within those bounds. And then you can go out 2 standard deviations, etc. The idea, though, is that we're looking at this curve. And I'm just going to leave a line right here for our mean. Oop, that's terrible. That's called mu for anyone that doesn't know how to pronounce it. That's your mu. And then which I'm terrible at writing, is called sigma. That's your standard deviation. All right. So when we talk about the probability, we're saying that for some value, let's just put it right here. Let's say this is X equals to something. That's our X. The standard normal distribution table, and we're not going to get into too much detail with that, unfortunately. I think we should because I'm old school, but there's a standard distribution table that you look up before we were allowed to use Excel for classes like this. You have to go look up these areas under the curve. And when you look at it, the area under the curve represents that area. That would be that the probability that X is less than or equal to some value X. I'm writing like that just so that it's easy. So that would be the probability that your value, the X bar, is in that area. Now, in this problem, let's go back a little. In this problem, well, that's a pain. Let's just start over. So in this problem, to put it into context of what we're actually looking at, we have our curve and we have our mean here, which we're told is equal to 172. And what we want to find is what's the area over here, where we want to know the probability that X bar is greater than or equal to 180. Now, the other important thing is to remember is that all of this area, this entire area, that probability is 1. Remember, the sum of all probabilities of all the possible outcomes is always 1. So, if we're using this function, and this function gives us this area over here, but we need this area over here, we would find that by finding this area in blue and then saying 1 minus the probability of that area in blue. All right, so when we do this in Excel with that norm.dist function, it's giving us this probability over here, and then we need to subtract that from 1. So let's go back over here. So what we're going to say is equals norm.dist, open paren. I love that it gives you all of the syntax here. So we have X. Our X is given as 180. Our mean is given as 172. Our standard deviation is 4.83. And what we're going to type here is true. Don't worry about that's cumulative. We're not going to get into too much detail on that right now. That gives us 0.95. That means that in this example, going back over to our little picture, that means that the probability that X is less than 180 is equal to 0.951. So now we need to say, oops, I can tell I'm really good at this. We need to say the probability that X is greater than or equal to 180 is the same as saying 1 minus the probability that X is less than 180. Because remember, those two probabilities together have to equal 1. So that's going to say 1 minus 0.951, which is about 0.049. All right. So, and again, you don't have to write this part out by hand here. I'm just showing that because I want to make sure everybody understands. So let's say that you were doing this on your own. You could do a couple of things. You could just say this equals 1 minus that. Oops, helps if I type it in correctly. Minus that. The other thing you can say is that the probability, and I'm just saying, let's start from the beginning, x bar greater than or equal to 180. We can say this equals 1 minus norm dot dist. Like if you know already what you're doing, and you can put in that 180 comma 172 comma 4.83 comma true. So that's about 0.049 when it rounds. So those are a couple of ways you can do it, but I do want to make sure that it's clear why we're doing it like that. The most important thing I want you guys to remember when you're working on these, because you're going to see a couple of different things, but I just want you to remember a couple of things specifically. This total probability is equal to 1. Okay, so anytime you need to do something a little different than what the answers are going to give you, you're going to have to, like, for example, if it's asking for the probability that x is greater, I'm just going to put some number a. That's the same thing as saying 1 minus the probability that x is less than a. Okay? So I hope that helps kind of clarify how we use that normal distribution function in Excel, but also what's going on and why those, that you can just subtract it from 1. So if you have any questions about that or anything else, let me know.